Hello everybody, my name is Andy Stanton. I am a professional children's author. Although I do look a bit more like a professional scarecrow at the moment, and that's partly because I've been staying at home and going a bit nuts. And I can't really be bothered to dress very nice. Just like everyone at the moment, we're all going a bit nuts, aren't we? That's why I'm here to read to you today for the Read the World project. The Read the World project is an incredible thing that's been set up by the International Publishers Association in conjunction with the World Health Organization and UNICEF. So Read the World is all about keeping our minds occupied when we're having to go through this crazy thing together. And you can go a bit nuts, can't you? So reading is one of the very best ways I know, whatever's happening in the world, to keep interested and to keep your mind active and ticking. Also, I know that you're all doing what we should be doing at the moment, which is all staying at home unless you need to be out, only associating with people you live with if you're outside, keeping 2 meters away from people you don't live with, washing your hands for 20 seconds and washing frequently when you have to do that, coughing into your arm when you need to cough, and also challenging a guinea pig to a game of chess. No, hold on, I don't think you have to do the last one, but the other ones are really important. Right, enough nonsense from me. Let's have some more nonsense from me. I'm going to read you Mr. Gammon the Goblins today, which is the third of my Mr. Gum series. I'm just turning off my phone right now so it doesn't bleep in the middle of my reading. And I'm going to read to you from Mr. Gum. No, I'm going to read you Mr. Gammon the Goblins, and it's been illustrated by David Tasman. So I'm going to be holding up his brilliant illustrations as I go through. So all very professional, yeah? All right, here we go. Mr. Gum and the Goblins by Andy Stanton. Illustrated by David Tasman. Chapter 1. In the Dead of Winter. 'Twas the dead of winter, and the little town of Lamonic Bibber lay under a blanket of snow and ice. Everywhere you looked, there was snow and ice. On the trees, snow and ice. On the ground, snow and ice. Inside the Museum of Snow and Ice, snow and ice. It was the coldest winter anyone could remember. Inside the inns and taverns, the menfolk sat around blazing log fires, drinking their ale and telling stories of never-to-be-forgotten heroes like, what's his name, and that tall man in the shirt who killed all those dragons. In the houses, mothers put their young ones to bed, soothing them with gentle lullabies about fierce lions and crocodiles. In a little cottage by the meadow, a hobbit sat reading The Lord of the Rings and microwaving his feet to keep warm. 'Twas the dead of winter, all right. The streets of Lamonic Bibber were quiet at that late hour, but presently there came the sound of footsteps as 3 shadowy figures turned into the high street. And now I will tell you who they were, for I have seen them before, and perhaps you know them too, if you've read any other Mr. Gum books. The leader was Friday O'Leary, a wise old man who knew the secrets of time and space. He carried a lantern which cast a ghostly yellow light on the icy cobblestones. Next came a 9-year-old girl called Polly. She too carried a lantern, and it shone brave and true, just like her pure, strong heart. And last of all came little Alan Taylor, the headmaster of St. Pterodactyl's School for the Poor. He was a gingerbread man with electric muscles, and he was only 15.24 centimetres tall. Alan Taylor was far too small to carry a lantern, but he had coated an acorn in glow-in-the-dark paint, and that was almost as good. "'Tis late, friends," whispered Friday O'Leary as the church bells rang for 10 o'clock, belting out like absolute marshmallows in the wintry night. "We should be getting home, for who knows what strange spirits are about in the dead of winter." "There are no strange spirits, kind Friday," chuckled Alan Taylor. "Methinks you have been spending too much time in the taverns, listening to the idle tales of drunken fools." "Hey," said Polly, "why is everyone a-talking all funny like in weird old books? We only done came out to get us a takeaway kebab." But just then, a horrible wailing noise rose on the wind, like an out-of-tune opera singer being dragged down a blackboard. Polly and Alan Taylor jumped in fright, and Friday did a dozen press-ups in terror. Doing, doing, doing. Whoop! He trembled. What was that? I got no idea, gulped Polly, but I don't like the sound of that sound one little bit. What if? Squeaked Alan Taylor, bravely weeing himself in fear. What if it's Mr. Gum? Now, at the mention of that name, they all went very quiet, because there was nothing worse than Mr. Gum, not even accidentally falling into a volcano full of history teachers. For Mr. Gum and his no-good friend, Billy William III, were the worst criminals Lamonic Bibber had ever seen. And they had done some of the most shocking things of all time, including 1. Trying to poison a massive whopper of a dog called Jake to death and destruction. 2. Trying to steal £1 billion off poor little Alan Taylor. 3. Tons of other stuff I can't think of at the moment. But Alan Taylor, no one's seen Mr. Gum for ages, said Polly. Nonetheless, he might have come back, replied Friday gravely, for as the famous saying goes, he might have come back. Let us investigate. And the three friends set off to see what was what, their lanterns swinging hopefully against the darkness. With each step they took, the wailing grew louder until... Wow! It's coming from the alley behind Mrs. Lovely's sweet shop, said Friday, and even as he said those words, a hunched-up figure appeared in the narrow passage, staggering towards them with outstretched arms, like a mummy. Not the nice type of mummy, obviously, the type with dusty old bandages, who's always chasing you through museums at night because you dug them up out of their pyramid because you were a scientist, and that's what scientists do. But hold on, frowned Polly. We haven't been messing around in no pyramids lately. That can't be a mummy after all. Why, she exclaimed, it's Mrs. Lovely, and she's been all duffed up and mangled. No, cried Friday in distress, for Mrs. Lovely was his wife, and he loved her like a barbecue. No, he cried into the cold, cold night. No! And there is the lovely Mrs. Lovely. She's been all duffed up and mangled. Chapter 2. Talk of the devil. But alas, it was indeed Mrs. Lovely, owner of the sweet shop and general all-round goodie. Onwards she came, stumbling half-blind over empty pizza boxes and wailing miserably all the while. At once, Friday ran up to offer her aid and comfort and some hazelnuts, and she collapsed unconscious in his arms. It was very dramatic and everything. What happened to thee? Friday sobbed, clutching Mrs. Lovely to his ear. What badness has befallen thee, oh darling wife? Save your questions, Friday, advised Alan Taylor. Mrs. Lovely is in shock, and it will take more than hazelnuts before she can tell us her terrible story. Come, let us get her to a place of rest. So together, the heroes carried Mrs. Lovely to a nearby inn. A sign over the door read, The Talk of the Devil Tavern. Talk of the Devil Tavern. No demons, phantoms, ghosts, ghouls, spirits or werewolves allowed. Or witches. Or little dolls that come to life and try to get you. Vampires welcome. Actually, on second thoughts, no vampires either. Polly pushed open the heavy wooden door, and in they went. It was warm and cosy inside, and they were glad to be out of the cold, but upon their entry, everything went suddenly quiet. The men folk stopped singing their merry songs and looked afraid. Demons! Cried one, starting up and pointing with a trembling finger towards the visitors. 'Tis a horde of demons, come to eat our bones! You're right, Jack, shrieked another. 'Tis demons for sure! And at that, the menfolk flew into a panic, hiding under chairs, under tables, hiding in pints of beer, anywhere they could. One man disguised himself as a fruit machine and stood there in the corner, covered in cherries and coughing up pound coins. Ka-ding, ka-ding, ka-ding. Blimey, you menfolk is well ignorant, said Polly indignantly. We're not demons. Not even slightly? Asked one of the menfolk anxiously. No, said Polly firmly. You lot's drunk too much beer and it's turned your brains all fuzzy and full of bad imaginations. Now go home, menfolk, and get some sleep. And don't blame me if you all got terrible headaches in the morning. I shouldn't wonder. OK, 9-year-old girl, said the menfolk. You're the boss for some reason. And off home they went. I do apologise about all that demon talk, said the innkeeper as he led Polly and her friends upstairs. But though they were drunk, the menfolk were right to be afraid. You never know who's going to come through the door in this terrible season when spirits and ghouls are at large. Why, only last week an evil skeleton came in and did a poo on the carpet. How I hate the dead of winter, he exclaimed, and the innkeeper showed the heroes to a cosy little bedroom with wooden floorboards. He bowed once and disappeared back downstairs. With great care, Friday dumped Mrs. Lovely down on the little bed. Polly fetched a flannel and gently she scrubbed the slime from Mrs. Lovely's goodly face, and Alan Taylor hopped up onto her chin and gently he flossed her goodly teeth. I shall take first watch, said Friday, pulling up a chair. If she wakes, I will wake you too, but until then, she must not be disturbed. The truth is a lemon meringue! He yelled at the top of his lungs, as he sometimes liked to do. At once, Mrs. Lovely's eyes snapped open, and she sat bolt upright in bed, like a startled panda caught shoplifting bamboo. What, eh, boing? She gabbled, looking around in confusion. Where am I? Fear not, Mrs. L, exclaimed Friday, for 'tis I, your beloved husband, me. Oh, hello, Friday, said Mrs. Lovely weakly. Oh, what's going on? But suddenly she caught her breath and drew the bed cover to her cheek in terror. Goblin Mountain, she murmured in the flickering candlelight. Now I remember. Tell us your tale, dearest wife-face, said Friday, tenderly clasping her nose to his. But will you do it as a song? He asked eagerly. Now is not the time for songs, my love, replied Mrs. Lovely. Besides, I'm all weak and feeble. I'm just going to say it normally. Sulked Friday, but Mrs. Lovely was determined to tell her tale her own way. It was like this, she began. You know how I'm always after unusual herbs to make my sweets? Well, the best ones grow up on Goblin Mountain. So early this morning, up I did climb to get at those herbs, but soon a blizzard whipped up. I couldn't see a thing. And then, suddenly, I found myself under attack from creatures unknown. They bit and scratched, and I thought I was doomed, but somehow I fought my way loose and escaped. After that, I don't remember anything, and now here I am, safe and sound. Hooray. What do you think's them creatures was? Asked Polly. I'm not sure, said Mrs. Lovely. That's why they were creatures unknown. But like I say, it happened on Goblin Mountain, just outside the Goblin Cave, where the Goblin River runs swift and blue. Said Friday thoughtfully, twirling his famous imaginary detective's moustache. Goblin Mountain, Goblin Cave. Goblins. It all points to one thing, Mrs. Lovely, he announced triumphantly. It was badgers who attacked you. A gang of wild badgers driven mad by the cold winter and too much sugar. We'll get some, cried Polly, sticking her head out of the window towards Goblin Mountain. Oi, badgers, she shouted, just in case they could hear over long distances like whales or telephones. You've gone too far this time, you stripy rascals. We're going to come and sort you out. During all this, Alan Taylor had been sitting in an ashtray on the bedside table, listening carefully. And now it was his turn to speak, for he knew all about the natural world, and that was why he was the headmaster of St. Pterodactyl's School for the Poor. I don't think it was badgers, he said. You see, badgers mainly come out at night, and Mrs. Lovely was attacked by day. Also, badgers tend to attack small mammals such as stoats, voles and marmots, which is a type of large ground squirrel. They hardly ever attack Mrs. Lovely. You know what I think it was? Badgers? Asked Friday, who hadn't really been listening properly. No, said Alan Taylor. I think it was goblins. Goblins, whispered Polly in fright. Goblins, moaned Mrs. Lovely fearfully. Goblins, nodded Alan Taylor gravely, and the moon slid out from behind a cloud, and its light spilled into the room like a long skeletal finger, and from up high on Goblin Mountain they seemed to hear horrible laughter. It was probably just their imagination, but it gave them goosebumps all the same. Chapter 3. In the Court of the Goblin King. So let us go now far, far from the room at the tavern where our heroes sit covered in goosebumps. Far, far from the high street where Martin Launderette is working on a very secret invention, which probably won't get explained until a bit later. Far, far from the woods on the edge of town where Friday's secret cottage lies hidden. Far, far from Lamonic Bibber, and away we go, over the frozen fields and streams, until we come to a place where the snow falls like Frankenstein's dandruff, and the wind howls like Dracula stubbing his big toe on a coffee table. Where the way is hard and steep and twisty, and where no sunlight ever seems to fall. Goblin Mountain. Dun, dun, dun. Up the cold, bare mountainside we go, almost to the very top, until we come to a horrible gaping hole, all ragged and torn from the rock. And there is a terrible din coming from that hole like nothing ever heard before, for 'tis Goblin Cave, and 'tis ram-packed full of goblins. Big ones, weeny ones, sort of in-betweeny ones, goblins. Bald ones, hairy ones, dirty, great big scary ones, goblins. Giant ones, tiny ones, nasty little spiny ones, goblins. Stinky ones, clean ones, not really, they were all stinky, goblins. Yes, wherever you looked, it was tails and spikes and fins and fur and extra arms and knobbly knees and all sorts. One of the goblins even had 2 heads and sat there constantly arguing with himself. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. No, he didn't. Do you want to see some of the goblins? Let's see. The top one's called Whippy, Captain Ankles, Dweezil, Funk Whistle, Oink Balloon, Liver Monk, Yak Triangle. Who's that one? Big Steve. Big Steve's got a little goblin under his hat called Little Steve. Get back to the reading. Yes, one of the goblins even had 2 heads because they were so disgusting, and he sat there constantly arguing with himself. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. No, he didn't. Oh, and talk about badly behaved. Those goblins were always up to mischief, scratching and biting, hanging from the ceiling and gobbing on the ones below, cheating at Monopoly, you name it. The only time they ever shut up was when the Goblin King arrived to give his commands. And there he sat, right in the middle of all that chaos, sprawled on a great throne made from a rusty dentist's chair he'd found on the mountainside one afternoon. His eyes were red and bloodshot, and his long, cruel fingers dripped with silver rings he'd stolen off old age pensioners. And in his big red beard sat a dark green emerald, gleaming nastily. My word, those goblins loved that big fat jewel. Shiny thing, they'd cry whenever it caught the light. Shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing. Yes, the Goblin King with the shiny thing in his beard. All their shouting drove the Goblin King crazy, but he had to put up with it. It was just part of the job. At the king's side stood his partner in dirt, a shady character known only as Burger Wizard III. He wore a robe made from an old sack which said low-quality pork chops, and he was smoking a pipe full of mud. Fancy a little puff, me old Goblin King, coughed the Burger Wizard, brandishing the pipe. It's really nice, he lied through another cough. Get lost, Flemmy, replied the Goblin King. Where's me supper? I'm starving my face off here. No problem, said the Burger Wizard, or BW for short. He reached into his filthy robe and pulled out a bunch of steaming chicken entrails. Ah, delicious, growled the Goblin King, swallowing them down whole. Now, I've got important kingy stuff to do. Mighty Goblin Army, he commanded. Tell me your news or I'll give you a Chinese burn. At this, the captain of the Goblin Army ran forward, his lieutenant at his side. News good, news good. Captain Ankles reported, we attacked old woman and duffed her up. Who cares about some stupid old woman, roared the Goblin King. What I want to know is how my evil plan's coming along. You built that tunnel yet? Nearly finished, squealed the lieutenant, whose name was Oink Balloon. One more day digging, then we're finally there. That's more like it, snorted the Goblin King. Now for a nice long snooze. He closed his eyes and put his feet up and shiny thing, screamed the goblins, pointing at the emerald in his beard and jumping up and down like carrot cakes. Oh, shabber me whiskers, scowled the king. These creatures is noisy. Whoever thought leading a goblin army would be such a bother? Chapter 4. You're a bad man, Mr. Laundrette. The next morning dawned cold and clear in Lamonic Bibber. Martin Laundrette was up early to work on his very secret invention when Jonathan Ripples, the fattest man in town, happened to stroll by. He was eating a very large sandwich filled with smaller sandwiches. Now, Jonathan Ripples might have been fat, in fact, he definitely was, but he wasn't stupid. Oh, Martin, what's all this? He asked, pointing towards the strange device. There were tubes and pipes coming off it, and a big motor attached to the back, and a wide round hole in the front. It's just a washing machine I'm building, said Martin Laundrette innocently. I do run a laundrette, you know. But why is it so big? Asked Jonathan Ripples, poking his head in through the front door. Oh, how Martin Laundrette chuckled inside when he heard this, because the truth was, he wasn't just building any old washing machine, he was building the Rippleizer 2000. And when it was ready, he was going to shove Jonathan Ripples inside and start it up. He always acts so high and mighty, thought Martin. Well, the Rippleizer 2000 will rinse the smile off his fat face once and for all. It won't kill him or anything, because this is a children's book, but it will teach that flabberwhopper a lesson, all right. You're not up to shenanigans, are you? Said Jonathan Ripples, who knew the laundrette owner only too well. Who, me? Protested Martin Laundrette. Gosh, no, I'm simply building a really big washing machine, that's all. One that you could fit into, but that's just a complete coincidence. Said Jonathan Ripples suspiciously, and off he waddled in all his glorious bulk. Chapter 5. The Meeting at the Stone Table. Meanwhile, over at the stone table on the other side of town, there was serious business taking place. Now, the stone table was a mysterious and powerful object of ancient times, and it stood in a field of long grass, surrounded by questions and long grass. How old was it? Who had built it? What had it been used for so long ago? No one knew the answers, but the best guess came from a famous scientist called Crunchy. I have done careful scientific experiments with a ruler, declared Crunchy, and I estimate that this stone table is over 20 years old, and I estimate it was built by people, and I estimate it was originally used as a table. Now I'm off to mess around in pyramids and dig up a mummy, because that is what scientists do. And now, sitting around the stone table in the thin December sunshine were Friday, Alan Taylor and Polly, all looking very solemn indeed. Good friends, began Friday, I have gathered you here this winter's morn because Father Christmas has been kidnapped by an evil sparrow who wants all the presents for himself, and it is up to us to come to his rescue. Friday, sighed Polly, that's just that film we watched last week, A Very Sparrowy Christmas, remember? Not really, said Friday truthfully. So why have I gathered you here this winter's morn? Because Mrs. Lovely got attacked on Goblin Mountain, said Alan Taylor. Remember? Not really, said Friday truthfully. Now listen, friends. Last night a wise dream came to me, and a strange voice spoke unto me, and it said this. Hello, Friday. How are you? I like your hat. Oh, by the way, you must go on a brave quest and sort out those goblins before things get worse. The voice said I must go up on Goblin Mountain, continued Friday, and I must go armed only with pure thoughts, an honest tongue, and a brave heart, plus a sword in case all that stuff doesn't work. And so, friends, I depart at noon, but I will need to pick one other brave traveller to accompany me on my quest. Oh, pick me, please, cried Polly. Sorry, said Friday, shaking his head in a little gesture he'd invented to mean no. Everyone in Lamonic Bibber used his ingenious system. Why not try it yourself? I have decided to take Yellowbeard instead, said Friday, and he pointed to a thick-set dwarf with a bushy black beard who sat by his side, dressed in chainmail and carrying a battle-axe. There's Friday and Polly and Alan Taylor at the stone table, and look, there's Yellowbeard, the dwarf. Until that moment, Polly hadn't even noticed him there. Yellowbeard, protested Polly, but Friday, we're a team, you and me, together we're the very best at adventures and such like. Sorry, said Friday, but Yellowbeard the dwarf it is, and he's my new best friend, by the way. Well, just then, Alan Taylor gave a little giggle, and suddenly Polly realised what was going on. Hold on, she thought, this looks like one of Friday's amazing jokes. She took a closer look and saw that Yellowbeard was just made out of cardboard. Friday had been up most of the night, cutting him out and colouring him in with felt-tip pens. Oh, Friday, laughed Polly, pushing Yellowbeard over into the snow. You and your amazing jokes. The truth is a lemon meringue, laughed Friday affectionately. Of course you're coming with me, Polly. And I will stay and look after Mrs. Lovely, proclaimed Alan Taylor. I will teach her about the natural world with my collection of wildlife documentaries. I have got a brilliant one about leopards. They are fascinating creatures, and the spots on their fur are known as spots. It is well said, sir, remarked Friday, taking out his tuba. Now, let us all sing a song to bring this great meeting at the stone table to an end. I love songs. Sorry, said Alan Taylor, looking at his tiny chocolate wristwatch. No time for singing. We've got to get you two ready. And the meeting was done. The rest of the morning was spent preparing for the quest. Alan Taylor scampered off to buy pies, for he knew the most about baked goods, being one himself. Polly ran to buy thick cloaks because it would be bitter cold up on Goblin Mountain. And Friday played a computer game down the arcade and got a really high score. Eventually, noon came round, as noon always does. Good old noon, it never lets you down. And it was time for the quest to begin. Farewell, good travellers, said Alan Taylor as Polly hugged him goodbye. Farewell, my crumbly friend, said Friday, stopping to tickle the little fellow under the chin. And having said their goodbyes, the courageous pair turned on their heels and started off down the long and winding road that would take them to Goblin Mountain. It had started to snow once more, soft white flakes that fell from the sky like angels' tears. Soon the travellers were just dots in the distance, and eventually Alan Taylor could not make them out at all. "'Tis a brave and lonely day," he thought as he stood there shivering in the icy wind. "Will I ever see those two again?" Then he ate his chocolate wristwatch. It sort of spoiled the moment, but he'd missed breakfast. Chapter 6. The Great Gifts. It was coming on dark by the time Polly and Friday reached the foot of Goblin Mountain. The craggy rock loomed over them forbiddingly in the dismal gloom, all twisted like one of those crazy little fun-time drinking straws you sometimes get. They're hilarious, like an old witch's finger. "Polly," said Friday, ruffling Polly's hair affectionately with a hair-ruffling machine set to the affectionate setting. "Are you absolutely 400% sure you want to do this?" But before Polly could answer, the wind howled louder than ever, and up blew a great blanket of snow, turning the world completely white so she couldn't see a thing. "Friday!" yelled Polly in the sudden emptiness. "What's happening?" "I don't know," came Friday's reply, but he sounded a very long way off, and in between all that wind and snow, Polly didn't know which way was which. And now she seemed to hear peculiar noises. Wolves are howling, "Hoo!" Haunting voices from the past, doorbells ringing in outer space, the sound of a milkmaid sitting on a watermelon. Meep, whimpered Polly in a small voice. It's all crazy and scary. Like them late night films on TV, what isn't for children's eyes? But then the unsettling noises were replaced by another sound, faint at first but growing louder. It was the merry tinkle of a music box, and as it grew in strength, the blanket of snow cleared clean away. With some surprise, Polly saw she was still standing at the foot of the mountain, although for some reason Friday was halfway up a fir tree. Oops. And now the sound of the music box seemed to be everywhere as a small boy came walking towards them through the snow. And just seeing that boy filled the travellers with warmth, for it was none other than the Spirit of the Rainbow. Child, he greeted Polly, though he was no older than she, for weeks I have lain awake, thinking about your brave journey. But we only thought of setting off this very morning, said Polly in wonder. I see many things, came the boy's amazing reply. Past and future, it does not matter which, for I see it all. Spirit of the Rainbow, said Friday, climbing down from the fir tree. You were the voice in my dream, telling me to come on this quest. You were, weren't you, you little scamp? Old man, I've no idea what you're on about, answered the lad. But you will soon face great troubles, so I have come to help you on your way. And then the Spirit of the Rainbow turned his face to the sky and spoke a few strange words from long ago before the world began. And when he turned back a moment later, he was bearing great gifts in his honest hands. Here, he said, and very solemnly, the Spirit of the Rainbow presented Friday with a fabulous horn. It shimmered with all the colours of the universe, and it had a cool picture of a monkey wearing sunglasses on the side. Behold, the legendary horn of Quasal, forged thousands of years ago by the high otter priests of Bastos, said the boy. When you blow upon it, I will come to your aid, but be warned, you may use it only once. After that, it is powerless forever. Then the boy turned to Polly and handed her his second gift. It was a fruit chew. Behold, said the boy, the fruit chew of Babylon. It might not look as good as the horn of Quasal, he admitted, but a time may come when you learn of its true greatness. Thank you, said Polly, but please, won't you come with us and help us out? I wish I could, sighed the Spirit of the Rainbow, but long ago, before the world began, I made a deal with Robert, the creator of all things, and the deal is that I can only help out every now and then. Besides, I have to revise for my maths exam or my mum will kill me. Spirit! Called a voice from down the way. You get inside right now and learn your fractions. See, said the Spirit of the Rainbow, and off he ran. I bet it was him in my dream, said Friday, watching him go. That's just the sort of thing he'd get up to. So, armed with their great gifts, the travellers continued on their way, feeling far more courageous than before. But their courage would have turned to porridge and been eaten by the bears of doubt if they had known who was watching them. For high up in his cave, the Goblin King was observing the travellers' every move. Chapter 7. The 3 Impossible Challenges. Blam! Yelled the Goblin King furiously as he peered into a golden telescope he'd borrowed from a department store. Blam! It's them meddlers coming up the mountain to meddle with me tunnel digging plans, no doubt. Don't fret, me old shoelace, coughed the burger wizard, choking on a pipe full of horse fat. They'll never make it past the 3 impossible challenges. Phew, said the Goblin King. I'd forgotten about them blurping challenges what all travellers climbing Goblin Mountain have to face. Oh ho, he cried, turning back to the telescope. Here comes the first challenge now. This is going to be really funty, snickered the burger wizard. You see, that was how the burger wizard pronounced the word funny. Challenge 1. The Troll. At that precise moment, down on the mountainside, the earth shook and trembled, and a dirty great troll stepped out from behind a boulder. He had greasy hair because he only bought cheap shampoo, and like all proper trolls, he carried a knobbly wooden club with a nail through it. Oh, he was a fearsome sight, as tall as 3 men he was, and he went to the gym every week to keep his muscles strong for crushing travellers and also to impress the girl trolls. Polly hid behind Friday, and Friday hid behind an atom, but it was no good. The troll spotted them anyway. Right! He shouted in a great booming voice. Shut up and don't move! He took a parchment from his nostril and began to read. There's the troll. There's his parchment in his hand. Here's his parchment. Let's see what it says. To whom I am about to eat, you have stepped onto my patch of the mountain like the fools you are. And now you must face my challenge, you idiots. And it is a mighty challenge indeed. No one has ever succeeded in beating me at this challenge, not in hundreds of years. And the challenge is this. You cannot get past me unless you guess my name. And you will never guess my name. And when you have failed to guess my name, I will crush your bones up and eat you. And that is my challenge. Yours sincerely, Arthur the Troll. This looks like trouble, Friday gulped. Shall we blow the horn of Quasar Quasar? No, we only gets one go at that, said Polly. I reckon we can handle this one. Bravely, she stepped forward. Your name is Arthur the Troll, said Polly. And don't lie, 'cause I know it is. Now yangle off, Harry. Lucky guess, muttered Arthur the Troll as he yangled off. I'm going to the gym. No way! Shouted the Goblin King in disbelief. Somehow them meddlers got past the troll.
Don't you worry,
Laughed the Burger Wizard.
it's the witch next, that'll muck 'em up.
Challenge 2. The Witch. Down on the mountain, a secret door in a rock opened with a scary creaking sound. And a witch came out, hobbling along with her little bent back and leaning on a cane. Oh no, it's a witch.
I'm gonna do spells on you.
She cackled.
Yes, that's right. Spells. I'm gonna muck you up.
Did you hear that? Said Friday in fright. Spells! Quick, said Polly. Blow the horn of Quasar. Hold on a moment. She's not getting nowhere near us. It was true. The witch was moving along at about 1 centimetre a minute. As the travellers watched, she was overtaken by a dead snail.
Well, you know, when I get near enough, I'm going to do spells,
called the witch, brandishing her cane.
then you'll be sorry. Spells.
Friday and Polly looked at each other. Shall we escape now or later? Said Friday. Let's escape later, said Polly, after supper. So Friday fetched some sticks to start a fire, and Polly took out the pies and some apples, and they made a fine meal. And all the while, the witch inched along, occasionally calling out her threats. After they had eaten, the travellers sat and talked a while. Then they played a few games of backgammon, and after that, they did a 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Altogether, it was a very jolly time, but eventually Friday stood up. Well, we'd better hurry off, or the witch will catch us in a few hours, he said. So up Polly got, and together they continued on their way.
Just you wait till I get close enough to do my spells,
the witch called after them, shaking her fist very slowly. Moss was growing on her shoes.
then you'll be sorry.
Unbelievable! Screamed the Goblin King, staring into the telescope. Somehow them meddlers beat the witch and all. True, admitted the burger wizard, but
They'll never survive the final challenge.
What, that thing that looks like a gherkin?
sneered the Goblin King.
Come off it, he's the easiest one of the lot.
Challenge 3. That thing that looks like a gherkin. Down on the mountain, the thing that looked like a gherkin rolled menacingly towards the travellers. Friday stepped on it with his boot, and they continued on their way.
Frimp!
Shouted the Goblin King.
If you ask me, them impossible challenges is a load of old toilet. Hoi, Captain Ankles,
he called, and instantly the Goblin Captain appeared, accompanied by his faithful Lieutenant Oink Balloon.
Now listen, Ankles, said the Goblin King, I want you to go and capture some meddlers for me. It's a big important job, right? So take your best soldiers with you. Take Whippy, Livermonk, Big Steve, Funk Whistle, Soup Dog, Jingles and Yak Triangle. And don't you let me down, Ankles, or I'll introduce you to me bashing fist.
Once he'd dealt with that, the Goblin King turned to more important matters.
Oi, Burger Wizard, where's me supper?
He demanded.
Right here, me old balaclava,
Laughed BW, holding up a plate of greenish meat and thistles. And there in the cave, the two ruffians dined on their slops like common swine, while all around the goblins shrieked and hooted and roared.
Ha ha ha,
Laughed the Goblin King through a mouthful of pig's bladder.
this is the life.
Chapter 8. Night on Goblin Mountain. As night fell, the travellers were making camp. Polly lit a fire, and Friday found a wild rabbit to cook, which was lucky because he was too tired to cook for himself. The rabbit whipped up some omelettes while the travellers gazed out over the mountainside into the vast starry night. It's a rabbit cooking the omelettes. Far below, the lights of Lamonic Bibber twinkled welcomingly. The houses looked warm and inviting, and Polly imagined she could hear the happy laughter of children coming from within. In the middle of town, a plume of blue smoke was just visible. It was coming from Martin Laundrette's very secret invention, the Rippleizer 2000 washing machine. Gazing over the scene, Polly felt tears well up in her eyes, not just because the rabbit was peeling an onion, but because she realised how much she loved Lamonic Bibber, every last bit of it. I loves that town, she said fiercely, and her heart swelled with pride as she spoke. It's the best place in the world, and I never want to live nowhere else. That's all I've got to say on the subject, the end. Well said, Polly, nodded Friday. He himself felt a little homesick for his secret cottage in the woods, and a nice Sunday roast, and sitting on Mrs. Lovely's lap, eating yoghurts. Tell you what, he said, taking out his grand piano. This is the perfect moment for a song. I've a new one I've been working on. It's called Me and Uncle Radish. Me and Uncle Radish. 1, 2. Well, me and Uncle Radish, we go everywhere together. We're the very... Shh, whispered Polly urgently, putting out the fire with a mug of water. I think I done heard something a-creeping in the bushes. Polly and Friday huddled together, trembling in the darkness. After a minute, the rabbit joined them, twitching its whiskers like a total whirly. And now they could all hear the noises, strange hisses and creaks and moans, and then they heard a twig snap. Then another snapped, and then another. And then the moon, it did come out from behind a cloud, and in its silvery light the travellers saw the game was up, for they were completely surrounded by goblins, standing there, snapping twigs in their bumpy old hands. Get them! Commanded Captain Ankles, and at this the goblins advanced, eyes wide and claws glinting wickedly. The poor rabbit, cried Polly. This isn't no place for you, little one, she said, scooping it up in her arms and carrying it to a safe place underneath a bush. You see, that was just the sort of girl Polly was. She always looked out for people smaller than herself, especially if they were rabbits. Right, said Friday. Now leave the rest to me. And he reached for his broadsword, the legendary broadsword, Lord Champion. It was made from the strongest steel known to man, and it shone like a flaming star of justice, and nothing could defeat it in battle, and it was lying on Friday's sofa in his secret cottage next to an empty yoghurt pot. Brummigans, cursed Friday. Forgot the broadsword, but then he had an idea. Get back, you monsters, he warned, doing a mime as if he was holding a mighty sword after all. Or taste the blade of my legendary invisible broadsword, Transparent-O, which has slain many, many goblins and trolls, and an elk. There's Friday, keeping the goblins at bay with the incredible made-up sword Transparento. The goblins hissed and started to back off, but not Captain Ankles. He wasn't fooled for a moment. "Invisible sword not real," he said. "Old bloke just pretending. Look, he just miming." And then the travellers were done for. The goblins advanced again, and this time there was no stopping them. They threw Polly and Friday into a great big sack and tied it up with dirty magic string you can't escape from unless you're Harry Potter. Then they lifted the sack above their gruesome heads, and back up the mountain they started, hooting and shouting to wake the dead. Boo, ha, ha. From beneath the bush, the little rabbit watched the whole terrible scene. "I will never forget that brave girl who carried me to safety," its bright green eyes seemed to say. "Well, I might, but I'll try really hard not to." "Polly," whispered Friday hopefully as they were bumped and bundled along in the sack. "Are you Harry Potter?" "No," said Polly. "I'm Polly." "Oh, that's what I thought," said Friday gloomily. "Can you reach the horn?" said Polly. "I think this might be a good time to summon the spirit of the rainbow." But try as he might, Friday couldn't reach it. And with their last hope gone, the prisoners fell silent, each fearing the worst. And on the goblins marched, on and on and on. All night long they marched, until, by the time they finally reached Goblin Cave, a grey dawn was breaking over the mountain, and the crows cawed mournfully in the bare trees. "Hello, Goblin King, we catched the meddlers," Captain Ankles called out.
"Shut up,"
came a familiar voice.
"I'm trying to watch Bag and Sticks on TV.
There's something familiar about that familiar voice, thought Polly, but in all the commotion as she and Friday were carried through the cave, she couldn't work out what.
"Halt!"
she heard Captain Ankles say, and then Oink Balloon ripped open the sack with his claws, and the travellers were face to face with the Goblin King himself.
"You flipping hasslers!"
spat the Goblin King, coming so close that Polly could smell his meaty old breath.
"Don't you know I'm the best, 'cause I'm so powerful and handsome?"
And suddenly Polly realised the dreadful truth. "Fry me in vegetable oil and call me a giant pack of crisps," she thought to herself. "The Goblin King is Mr. Gum." Oh, and there's Billy William. He's probably calling himself the Burger Wizard or something, I expect. Yes, Polly has just found out the truth. The Goblin King is none other than Mr. Gum. Chapter 9. Polly and Friday in the cave.
"Well, well, well,"
said Mr. Gum. The emerald in his beard glinted and shone as if somehow laughing at them, and the goblins chanted,
"Shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing,"
until Polly felt she was in a nightmare. But she knew nightmares didn't smell so bad, so it must be real.
"Here am I," spat Mr. Gum, "minding my own business and just being a flipping Goblin King like nature intended, and you two have to come and spoil all me good work."
"You calls duffing up Mrs. Lovely good work?" shot back Polly. "Mr. Gum, you make me as sick as an alligator." "Hey, Friday," she yelled. "Blow that horn and make it funky." Friday snatched up the horn of Quazal Quazal and brought it to his lips. "Oh, spirit of the rainbow, come to us now," he pleaded, and on that horn he did blow. A long marmping note flew out into the cave. It went bouncing off the walls, bashed Captain Ankles in the belly and flew out over the mountainside. And down in Lamonic Bibber, the townsfolk awoke, and their hearts were filled with joy to hear that gorgeous noise. The birds sang, the sun shone, and a dead flower on old Granny's windowsill came back to life and started growing golden pears. "Right," said Friday when the last strains of the glorious note had faded. "Any second now, you're going to be absolutely rainbowed like you've never been rainbowed before." Everyone waited. Friday checked his watch. Mr. Gum picked his nose. Someone sneezed. "Yep," said Friday, a little less confidently this time. "He'll be here any second now." Hey, he shouted helpfully to the Spirit of the Rainbow in case he had taken a wrong turn. We're over here, in a cave.
Okay, said Mr. Gum eventually. He's obviously not turning up. I suspect he's scared because he knows I'm simply too powerful and I'm excellent at punching. So let's just get on with things. Mighty Goblin Army, he cried.
Excuse me, said Friday. Are you about to tell the goblins your plan?
Yeah,
said Mr. Gum.
So what?
Well, would you mind doing it as a song? Asked Friday. I love songs.
You lunatic,
said Mr. Gum, shaking his head in disgust.
Your brain's too small for your head. That's your problem, O'Leary. Now, goblins, he continued, our hour has finally come. Today we starts down that tunnel, what we've been building. I never told you why, but now I'm gonna. That tunnel goes right down through this flabbering mountain, and guess where it comes out? Lemonic Bibber!
At this, the goblins shrieked with joy, Polly gasped in horror, and Friday did the splits in amazement.
So, me little goblins, the plan is this, explained Mr. Gum. We sneaks down that old tunnel, we bursts out, and we takes everyone by surprise. And before they know what's what, it ain't Lemonic Bibber no more, it's Goblin City. And we can run wild and drink beer all the live long day. Yeah! Screamed the goblins. Goblin City! Goblin City! Sorry, but no, Mr. Gum, said Polly. I loves that town, and you'll never turn it into no goblin paradise full of litter and dog mess everywhere. Oh no? What are you going to do about it?
Laughed Mr. Gum, and he stretched out his arms and chanted,
Burger Wizard, do that thing with the burgers, gujoob.
And suddenly the air was full of hamburgers as Billy William did what he liked doing best, throwing bad meat at good people. Golly, his hands were just a blur as he spun those burgers, fast and furious like horrid grey frisbees. It's supper time, he cackled, launching a quarter-pounder straight at Polly's knee. Enjoy your meal. Oh, Mrs. Lovely, said Friday, as he and Polly backed away from the grisly missiles. I know you cannot hear me, but I love you more than a man ever loved a woman. I love you like the sun loves the stars, and like swordfishes love swimming through the sea, trying to stab things with their sharp faces. I was hoping that one day you'd tell me your first name, but alas, Mrs. Lovely, it is not to be. For now I go to my doom, and Suddenly he was falling through pitch black. And then Polly was falling with him. Together they fell. But that bit wasn't too bad. But then they landed, and it hurt. Oof, said Friday, as he landed on a hard stone floor. Yunk, he exclaimed as Polly landed on top of him. Chirp, he added, just because he felt like it. What happened? Asked Polly in confusion. But then Mr. Gum's bloodshot eyes appeared far above, glaring down at them.
You've fallen down the old abandoned well, grinned Mr. Gum. I knew that was going to happen, he lied. It was all part of me ingenious plan, probably.
Yeah, said Billy William, appearing at his side. And now we're going to go down the tunnel with all them goblins, and soon we'll be running things.
Yeah, agreed Mr. Gum. And here's a thing, O'Leary. When we go down that tunnel, we're going to do a brilliant song with yodeling and everything, and you're going to miss every incredible second of it.
Oh no, wailed Friday. How can this be happening? How? It's just not fair.
Right,
said Mr. Gum, affectionately kicking Billy William as hard as possible in the shins. What a nice affectionate kick that is.
Let's get going, me old burger wizard. We got songs to sing and tunnels to go down.
And then they were gone, and Polly and Friday were left alone in the dark. Chapter 10. The Tunnel Song, featuring a special burp solo from Livermonk the Goblin. Okay, so here's the Goblin King and the Burger Wizard and all the goblins going down the tunnel, and they sing, Goblin King.
I am the Goblin King, listen to me sing. Yodel-lodel-lodel-lodel-lay, Burger Wizard.
And I'm the Burger Wizard, listen to me play. Yodel-lodel-lodel-lodel-lay. Now Whippy the Goblin.
My name Whippy, yoda-yoda-yoda.
Goblin King.
Shut up, Whippy, it's not your flipping turn.
Yodel-lodel-lodel-lodel-lay. Oink Balloon.
My name Unky Balloon, yoga, yoga, yeah.
Burger Wizard.
Shut up, Oink Balloon. It's not your turn neither, you stupid moron. I can't believe you goblins don't know when to sing and when not to sing. You're mucking everything up. Ah, yodel-o-del-o-del-o-del-ay.
Chorus. Let's go down the tunnel, 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 let's go down the tunnel. Yes, let's go down the tunnel, let's go down the tunnel. Tunnels are quite good. Goblin King. Now, Livermonk, burp solo, take it away, Livermonk. At this point in the story, we're interrupted by a letter from the editor. Dear readers, we here at Egmont Books have decided that this song has gone on far too long already. It is in the worst possible taste. We are stopping it right now. We had no idea it would be quite so awful. Sorry, everyone. Signed, Mr. Egmont. Mr. Egmont, the publisher, and his wife, Mrs. Egmont. Actually, just Mr. Egmont, wearing a dress. And now, back to the story. Chapter 11, Heroes in the Snow. Polly and Friday lay at the bottom of the well, in the darkest darkness they had ever not seen. The goblins were on their smelly way to Lamonic Bibber, and there was nothing they could do about it. I can't believe I missed the song, Friday said miserably. I bet it was magnificent. Oh, I bet you it wasn't, said Polly. Knowing Mr. Gum, it was probably full of mistakes and burping and what have you. Now, let's see what's going on round here and maybe we can escape. Together, they scrabbled around in the darkness and soon their hands found something smooth and cold. It was the side of the old well. Maybe we can move these bricks, said Polly eagerly, and they set to work, pulling and pushing at the stonework. But no, those bricks weren't going anywhere. They'd been there for hundreds of years, and they fancied being there for hundreds of years more, and that was their final word on the matter. After a while, Polly collapsed back in the darkness. I hate it, she fumed. Mr. Gum's just left us here to rot away like snowmen. And what's more, just then, one of the bricks shifted a little. Then, out it plopped onto the floor. Magic bricks, said Friday, tapping his nose wisely. I thought as much. But for once in his life, Friday was wrong. A little face peeked out of the hole where the brick had been. Why, it's that rabbit, gasped Polly. And yes, it really was, because that rabbit hadn't forgotten Polly's kindness, and somehow it had known she was in trouble. So, through the mountain it had burrowed, and those stupid bricks were no match for its powerful digging legs. Now follow me, the rabbit's bright green eyes seemed to say, and the travellers crawled through the burrow after the long-eared superhero. The passageway twisted and turned until Polly lost all track of time and Friday lost one of his shoes, but eventually they saw moonlight shining up ahead. Sweet, sweet moonlight, and out they climbed into the cold, starry night. Thank you, little one, said Polly, bending down to shake the rabbit's paw. My work here is done, the rabbit's bright green eyes seemed to say. Now it is up to you, travellers. Only you can save the day with your bravery and courage. The way is hard, but I have faith in you because I am a rabbit. Wow, said Friday as the creature bounded off into the darkness. I've never met a rabbit with such talkative eyes. Never mind that, said Polly. We're still ages away from Lamonic Bibber, and them goblins is easy going to beat us back there before we can warn the townsfolk. It looked totally hopeless, but just then, hark, said Friday. What sound is this coming our way this blustery night? Why, it almost sounds like, yes, it is. Barking. Could it be? Said Polly, hardly daring to believe it was true. Could it be? She repeated, jumping on Friday's shoulders to get a better look. Yes, she cried excitedly. Goal! #1 hit record on the charts. Gold medal, extra life, brand new pencil case. You see, those were all the best things Polly could think of, because rattling through the fields on his huge, friendly paws was her old friend, Jake the dog, and a fine, fine dog was he. There were sleigh bells all over his tail, and an enormous Christmas tree stuck to his back. And right at the top, like the star he was, sat little Alan Taylor, scanning the fields with his juicy raisin eyes. There they are! The biscuity fellow beamed when he saw the travellers, and as Jake came belting towards them, Polly laughed to see who was staring at him, for it was a little boy no older than she. Spirit of the rainbow, she laughed in pure joy. Is it really you? Of course, replied the lad, as Jake pulled up and began licking Polly's eyebrows. I promised to come to your aid when the horn of Quasar was blown, and here I am." "Thank you, sir," said Friday graciously, "but there is one thing I have to ask. Couldn't you have come a bit sooner?" "Old man," explained the boy, "when you blew that horn, I was in Newcastle staying over at my cousin's. I had to catch the train, and it was delayed for ages, and then the taxi from the station broke down, so I had to walk the last 2 miles on foot. And then I had..." "What?" he asked, noticing Friday's surprise. "You didn't think I would just magically appear when you blew the horn, did you?" "Oh," laughed the boy as the travellers climbed aboard Jake's festive back. "The very idea. How you humans do amuse me." And then they were all laughing together, for the idea of someone just magically appearing was simply ridiculous. But now there was no time to lose. "Mush!" cried the Spirit of the Rainbow, which is something you say to dogs to get them to run really fast through snow, no one knows why. And woof, pazang! Jake took off like a hairy bullet called Jake, and then there they were, racing back to Lamonic Bibber in the moonlight. "Alan Taylor," said Friday as they rode, "how is my darling wife, Mrs. Lovely?" "Oh, fine, thanks," chuckled Mrs. Lovely, popping her head out from inside the Christmas tree, where she'd been hiding for a surprise. "I'm completely better, tra-la-la-la-la." "The truth is a lemon meringue," shouted Friday happily. Mrs. Lovely jumped into his arms and everyone pretended not to look while they'd done a bit of kissing on that. The rest of that night passed in a hazy, crazy daze, with Jake woofing and yuffling endlessly through the white, powdery snow. It was all down to that big bark machine now, and he ran like no dog has ever run before or since. Actually, one dog has run like that before. His name was Mop Mop, and it happened in Denmark in 1974. Mop Mop was chasing a florist through the streets of Copenhagen. "Who cares about Mop Mop?" said Polly. "Come on, Jakey, run!" And so, over the frozen fields, big Jake ran, hardly even slipping on the icy bits. Through snowdrifts great and small, bounding over walls, he leapt to country style, he ran for miles and miles, while nighttime turned to day, he ran a long, long way, in the jingle-jangle morning he went slobbing along. "But is he slobbing along fast enough? That's what I just want to know," thought Polly anxiously. "Have faith, child," the Spirit of the Rainbow reassured her, as if he could read her brains. "And if you can't have faith, have a fruit chew." "Hey, that reminds me," said Polly, fishing out the fruit chew of Babylon from her shirt pocket. "I still got this great gift what you gave me." "Patience, child," said the Spirit of the Rainbow. "The fruit chew of Babylon is powerful, but it must be used at just the right moment, for as it is written in the stars in special space ink, the fruit chew of Babylon will sort out the truth of it all." "Whatever can that mean?" wondered Polly, but the Spirit of the Rainbow would say no more, and on they rode in silence, racing desperately against time. Overhead, morning was breaking as Jake rounded one last corner, and a familiar sight met Polly's eyes. "Boaster's Hill!" she exclaimed happily. "We're back home where we belongs." But her happiness didn't last long, because something strange was happening at the bottom of the hill. As the heroes watched, a huge load of soil went flying everywhere, and then, in the blink of a tramp's eye, the goblins burst out from the hillside, spitting and dropping litter all over the place and designing cheap blocks of flats made of concrete. They had only been in Lamonic Bibber for about 3 seconds, but already it was starting to look like Goblin City. Chapter 12. The Fruit Chew of Babylon.
"I am the head beekeeper!"
yelled Mr. Gum as he emerged from the tunnel. This was just his way of saying, "I am the best," for Mr. Gum admired beekeepers tremendously. And why? Because beekeepers are in charge of bees and can command them to sting anyone they fancy.
"Ha ha, me old Stilton. You know what's really going to be funty?" said Billy William, laughing like a pair of scissors. "When this here goblin army attacks the sleeping townsfolk."
"Yeah,"
agreed Mr. Gum, chuckling as Yak Triangle pushed a bench into the duck pond.
"'cause who knows we're coming? No one. And that's what a surprise attack's all about."
"Wrong," said a pure, clear voice from above, and the villains looked up in amazement to see the heroes standing on the hillside, the sun gleaming behind them to prove they were definitely the goodies. "This is what a surprise attack's all about," said the Spirit of the Rainbow.
"Meddlers!"
shouted Mr. Gum in fury.
"Burglars! Google wizard, do that thing with the burgers. Google.
But before Billy could even reach for his first missile, Jake was upon him, knocking him flat to the icy ground. Billy's appalling hamburgers spilled out harmlessly on the ground, and the Spirit of the Rainbow swept them away with a broom made by a company called Forces of Good Limited. "Yeah!" shouted Polly in triumph. "Take that, Billy, you unholy lobster!" "Mr. Gum's getting away," warned Friday. "I don't think so," chirruped Mrs. Lovely, and she picked up Alan Taylor and swung him through the air towards that so-called king. Vroom. "Maximum gingerbread strength!" shouted the little biscuit, even though this really didn't mean anything. He landed in Mr. Gum's disgraceful beard and gave a mighty kick at the emerald, sending it flying up into the air. Slowly it flew, turning lazily in the early morning sunlight, and dozens of little round goblin eyes watched it go. Without thinking, Polly reached out her hand and caught it. And dozens of little round goblin eyes turned in her direction.
"Me emerald!" moaned Mr. Gum. "Me lovely emerald, what's rightfully mine, and what I definitely didn't steal off a rich lady in London last year."
"Shiny thing!"
the goblins cried eagerly. "Shiny thing!" "Uh-oh," said Polly. "Run, child," urged the Spirit of the Rainbow. "Where to?" squeaked Polly. "Just run," replied the lad calmly. "And have faith, when the time is right, you will know what to do." Well, all Polly knew was that a lot of scary goblins were coming after her, babbling, "Shiny thing!" So she turned tail and off she scooted. At that exact moment, there was a knock at Jonathan Ripple's front door. He went to answer it and was astonished to find there was nobody there. "That's strange," he frowned, but then, "Ooh," he remarked, "what's this?" He bent down to take a closer look. It was a mince pie, lying innocently on the doorstep. A moment later, it was gone. Just another poor victim of Jonathan Ripple's unstoppable jaws. But then those jaws spotted another pie. Just a little further along. In fact, there was a whole trail of mince pies. And soon, Jonathan Ripples was on a wild pie chase, scoffing up the tasty little scallywags without a thought of where they might be taking him. "It's like that dream I once had as a boy," he exclaimed happily as he munched. "The one about the pies." From behind the Rippleizer 2000, Martin Laundrette watched his plan unfolding. Come on, he mumbled excitedly. He'd hardly slept for days. His hair was all messed up. He was coated in engine oil and non-biological washing powder. "I'll show that fatty come lately who's the boss once and for all," he gibbered insanely. Come on. Now Jonathan Ripples was 3 pies away, now 2, and now he spied the very last pie. It was the biggest one of all, and it was perched right in the doorway of the washing machine. As if in a trance, Jonathan Ripples waddled forward. He reached for the pie, and Martin Laundrette crept up behind him, ready to Rippleize. But just then, Polly came rushing around the corner, the goblin army snapping at her heels. I can't, goes on no more, she panted. But then she saw the washing machine, and for some reason, she remembered the words that were written in the stars. "The fruit chew of Babylon will sort out the truth of it all." And suddenly, Polly knew exactly what she had to do. With the last of her strength, she raced for the washing machine, shoved Jonathan Ripples aside, boof, and chucked the emerald in through the round doorway. Well, those goblins didn't think twice. They just piled straight in after it, desperate to get their grabby hands on the shiny green jewel. "Quick, Mr. Ripples, sir, shut the door," cried Polly. "It's too heavy for me, I'm only 9. Brave, greedy Jonathan Ripples slammed the door shut, and Polly started up the machine. Then she took the legendary fruit chew of Babylon from her skirt pocket and popped it into the powder hatch. There wasn't even time to unwrap it. "I hopes I done it right," she prayed, and 2 seconds later, The machine rattled up and down like a baby shaking a wasp's nest. The water turned all the colours of the rainbow, and the trapped goblins whizzed around and around in the bubbly liquid. Without warning, a goblin shot out from the chute, somersaulted through the air, and landed at Polly's feet. Without warning, another one followed. That was another 5. Poppity pop pop pop. That was absolutely loads of them. Soon all the goblins had been spat out onto the pavement. There they sat, dazed and blinking in the sunlight. But somehow they looked different, thought Polly. Where's all their fins and spikes and claws? Because the goblins were goblins no longer. They were children with rosy cheeks and happy laughing faces. Thank you, Polly, laughed a boy called Terry, who had once been Captain Ankles. You saved us. I used to be Liver Monk, who burped ever so much, said a tiny girl called Caroline. But now look at me. I'm back to good old Caroline. The fruit tree of Babylon has made everything all right. What the grapefruits are going on, said Polly in amazement as the rest of the heroes rushed up, led by David Casserole, the town mayor. Well done, Polly, he beamed. You found the 300 children who ran away in September. Chapter 13. The truth about it all. See, laughed Terry, I'm not Captain Ankles at all. Those fins and spikes and claws and things, they're not real, they're just costumes. But why did you behave so bad and pretend to be goblins? Asked Polly in confusion. I'm ashamed to say it was because we were horrible, naughty children, said Caroline, stepping forward with a red face. We didn't like going to school one little bit. And one afternoon, the teachers made us be in a pathetic school play called 300 Goblins Standing Around Doing Nothing, said Alex, who used to be the goblin known as Big Steve. Only we didn't want to do the school play, continued a tall girl called Vicky, previously Soup Dog. So we ran away to Goblin Mountain, still in our costumes, said Eric, who had once been Yak Triangle. And we ran amok and lived like savages, and we acted so wild that eventually we forgot we had ever been children at all, confessed Brian. He'd been whippy. And one day, Mr. Gammon and Billy Williams spied us, said Veronica, who was Oink Balloon. And they thought we really were goblins, you see. And by then, we had forgotten all our lessons, or even how to speak properly, so we just joined their army for a spiteful laugh. But now the fruit tree of Babylon has made us understand how important school is, said Terry. Otherwise, we might end up like Mr. Gum or Billy William, who never did learn better. But please, don't make us go back to our old school. It was just no good. Children, said Alan Taylor, who had been listening carefully, which school were you at? It was Dr. No Fun's School of Boredom, of course, replied Alex. Yes, I've heard about Dr. No Fun's, sighed Alan Taylor. They're very old-fashioned at that school, but at St. Pterodactyl's School for the Poor, we believe in teaching children about the natural world and letting them do paintings about how they're really feeling inside. Oh, we'd like to go to your school ever so much, chorused the children. I'm sorry, said Alan Taylor sadly. There are no available places. The children's faces fell. Only joking, cried the gingerbread prankster, his electric muscles whirring merrily. Come with me, you will be my first ever pupils. And away he jigged up the hill, the children skipping happily after him. Look, children, Polly heard him say as they disappeared from view. That tall brown thing is known as a tree. After that, everyone congratulated everyone else, and all the townsfolk were full of joy and merriment. Well, nearly all of them. You were going to put me in that machine, weren't you? Said Jonathan Ripples, tapping Martin Laundrette on the shoulder with a chubby finger. Yes, I was, admitted Martin Laundrette, trying to look ashamed. But, now the fruit chew of Babylon has taught me the error of my ways. Forget it, Skinny, said Jonathan Ripples sternly. You are so getting sat on. Well, everything's back to normal, smiled Polly, looking on as Martin Laundrette was squashed into oblivion. But hold on, what about Mr. Gum and Billy? Don't you worry about them, said Friday, tapping his nose. I left them at Boaster's Hill. They promised to wait for me to come back with something to tie them up. And look, he said proudly, I've just bought a nice strong rope. Why, Polly, whatever's wrong? Them two scruffers done tricked you, said Polly, shaking her head sadly. I bet you anything they've run off by now. Nonsense, said Friday confidently. They'll still be there. After all, Mr. Gum and Billy William are very trustworthy men. They are, he said, realising he'd been fooled by master criminals. Oops. Never mind, Friday, said Polly. The important thing is Lamonic Bibber's okay and it's time for a big pig blowout feast. So off they skipped to the town square to find the feast already underway. And what a turnout! Nearly everyone was there. Old Granny, the little girl called Peter, Marvellous Marvin, the retired wrestler. Beanie McLeany, who loved things that rhymed, was having a chat about a cat with a bloke in a hat. And Jake the dog was helping Mrs. Lovely to make sweets by licking up the bits that fell on the floor. And when Mrs. Lovely's back was turned, he was helping by making bits fall on the floor on purpose. But where's the spirit of the rainbow, said Polly, looking around. He should be here enjoying the fun and showing everyone what a winner he is. That honest lad cares not for rewards and fame, little miss, nodded Friday wisely, and that is why he is the spirit of the rainbow instead of a snooker player or something. Oh well, I'll tell you who did turn up though, that rabbit from the mountainside. It hopped into Polly's skirt pocket and there it sat for the rest of the day, drinking a carton of apple juice. Oh, and Alan Taylor came back down from the hill with his new pupils, and they'd already done loads of amazing paintings, showing how they really felt inside, and everyone clapped. Good work, children, said Alan Taylor, and he rewarded them all with tiny gold stars and 10 bonus Alan points each. And from Polly's skirt pocket, the rabbit watched the whole happy affair. All's well that ends well, its bright green eyes seemed to say, this is nice apple juice. And the laughter and the capering continued on, and none laughed louder or capered harder than Polly and her good friend Friday O'Leary. For though their legs were tired from their long journey, their hearts were bursting like joyful apricots to be back where they belonged. Look, Frides, exclaimed Polly at length, the snows are melting. And the sun's coming out, proud as you please, and soon all the ice cream vans will come out of hibernation. I do believe you're right, said Polly. What an adventure it's all been. Tell you what, he nodded, getting out his blue guitar, this calls for a song. You better hurry it up then, said Polly. I've got a feeling we're nearly out of time. Time, little miss, laughed Friday. Why, we've got all the time in at the end. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to watch me read Mr. Gum and the Goblins. I've been reading, as I told you at the start, for Read the World, which is a brilliant campaign. I'd like to challenge all other kids authors out there to sit down and record a video of themselves reading their books or just reading a bit from their book. It's a brilliant thing to do, and like I said at the start, reading probably now is even more important than ever. And also, reading is just one of the most important things on earth at the best of times. Reading is one of my favourite things. I hope it's one of your favourite things too. Stay safe, everybody. Stay well. Keep washing your hands. Keep reading. Keep thinking. Keep writing your own stories. Bye!